Thank you for joining me as we unbox and assemble your INSpECTor. I'm Joseph from Entotech, and you are one lucky entomologist. In the box, you will find 3 individually wrapped items: the frame of the device, the light shroud, and a bag of tools that has the knob assemblies, insect mounts, and feet if they are longer than 20 millimeters long. The tools that are included are a 1.5 millimeter and a 2.5 millimeter Allen wrench. One knob assembly does not have a gear and the other does. You can place them standing on the end of the knob so that they don't roll off of your table for now. Before we get started, do a quick check over everything to make sure that the print is not broken, cracked, or bent. Swing the arm to make sure it is moving smoothly on its own. Underneath, you should see a rubber band holding the larger belt in place, and the smaller belt should be holding a gear in place. Let's get started with the left-hand knob assembly without a gear. The bottom of the INSpECTor has 2 slots that you should align the bearings on the shaft with in order to slide it into place. You will need to pull the knob out in order for the shaft to clear the gear. Pay attention to the gap as we move forward. Insert the end of the shaft into the gear. Once it is in place, push the bearings into their press-fit holes. You can use the 2.5 millimeter Allen to help wedge them into place. Once the bearings are partially in place, try to push the shaft all the way through the gear. If it won't go, you may need to loosen the set screws in the gear if one is in the way. Finish pressing the bearings into place with the Allen wrench. Watch the gap. The gear should be pressed against the bearing to align correctly with the internal cavity for the belt. Tighten the set screws when you are completed. Check the movement between the knob and the arm. They should be smooth. Now we're ready for the other side. Next, we are going to install the knob assembly for the right-hand side. The belt should have been in place during transport by the rubber band. If the rubber band came loose and the belt has lost its position, the belt should always have its teeth facing the bearing that it touches. As the belts pass through the base, their teeth should be facing the arm. Flip the INSpECTor upside down, place the other knob assembly. This one should have a gear attached to the end of it nearby. Remove the rubber band from the belt. Inspect the belt to make sure it doesn't have a twist in it. It should have the teeth facing the bearings that it touches, and at the end of the loop, have the teeth facing inward so you can insert the gear into that loop. Align the bearings on the shaft with the slots in the base so you can insert the assembly. It can be helpful to angle the assembly on its way in. The belts usually twist a little bit during this process, so untwist them and have the teeth touching the bearings. Press the bearings into their final position. Sometimes they drift as they are inserted. Double check that they didn't move. Use the 2.5mm Allen to wedge the bearings all the way in. The belt will be loose at this time. Loosen the set screws on the gear so that it can freely move along the shaft. Use the 2.5mm Allen to loosen the belt tensioner screws. If you leave them a little tight, then it makes the next part easier. Using either your finger or the 1.5mm Allen, you can wedge the tensioner to apply pressure to the belts, and the gear will self-align with it. This does not need to be very tight to be effective. Use the 1.5mm Allen to tighten the set screws of the gear to lock its position. It is fairly likely that the gear will be very close to or touching the bearing. If you feel that it is too loose, you can flip the gear around on the shaft to get additional tensioning on the belt. If the knob is not smooth in its motion, that means the gear is not properly aligned with the bearings that are on the tensioner. Move the position of the gear or the tensioner until it is perfectly smooth. Thank you again for your support, and I hope that you come to enjoy your INSpECTor.